I wasn't sure if I was going to make this video, but I think it's important.
Australians will head to the polls on Saturday, October 14 for a referendum on an Indigenous voice to Parliament.
A new poll showing the no vote is ahead 56 to 44% nationally, now leading in every state and territory, suggesting the referendum is on track for defeat.
Yes and no voters for an Indigenous voice to Parliament have clashed outside a no campaign event in Brisbane. Protesters held up banners and chanted outside as hundreds of no supporters gathered inside.
Australia has never been more tense. A racial divide, it seems, has been drawn. And I'm really at a loss as to what will or won't happen in the coming weeks. You see, in a matter of days, we will vote as a nation to change our constitution. This vote is known as the Voice to Parliament for Indigenous Australia. The Voice itself is an advisory group to help the government understand problems that Indigenous people face every single day. And we're mainly talking about Indigenous brothers and sisters in remote communities. And honestly, doesn't that sound great? There are so many people who live in buttfuck nowhere who desperately need assistance. They desperately need things that we take for granted. Because those people are just as Australian as you or I or everyone that lives in your street. All right? They deserve better. But will voting yes in this referendum help them? Maybe. Maybe it will. In Australia, our constitution is a very important document, like it is in many countries. Unfortunately, we don't have the freedom of speech written in like the Americans do. That's unfortunate. Maybe a referendum on that should be held as well. In fact, the government has spent that much money on this vote. Why don't you ask a whole heap of questions, because we all have to go and vote anyway. Anyway, a referendum is held to change a bit of the constitution. There is a proposal and the wider Australian population, all 28 million or 26 million of us, get to vote yes or no. This referendum coming up is in relation to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander individuals. And this is the question that all Australians will be asked. This comes from thevoice.gov. Voters will be asked to vote yes or no on a single question. The question on the ballot paper will be a proposed law to alter the Constitution to recognise the First Peoples of Australia by establishing an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice. Do you approve the proposed alteration? Yes or no? At first glance, it's a simple answer, but it's not that simple. It's really not. Even me just saying that opens me up for ridicule and hate, because we can't even have a conversation about this without people claiming that you're just a dirty, horrible racist. And that's not helpful at all. That's really hurt this debate. Anytime someone comes up with a question, you get labelled as a racist. That is not helpful whatsoever. If you're unfamiliar, the relationship that white Australians with British, Scottish and Irish heritage have with Indigenous people over the past 250 whatever years has been absolutely diabolical. The things that were done to Aboriginal people, and let me put this out there, done to every native peoples all over the world when somebody has landed from another country. And we're not just talking about white people here. People of all different colours did this shit. It was horrible. We're talking murders and genocides, wiping people out. And that was just in the early years. You fast forward into the 60s here in Australia, there's a white Australia policy where they're trying to assimilate Aboriginal people and get rid of all the beautiful culture and heritage that Aboriginal people have. And I genuinely mean that. I'm not just saying that shit. I know people are watching this video going, that's that racist guy. He made Aboriginal jokes. Fuck off. Fuck off if you say that. I'm a comedian. I make jokes about every single fucking person. Every type of person, every colour of person, every religion. I refuse to listen to people when they say you can't punch down and joke about Aboriginal people. Fuck you. Punch down? How horrific is that to say that Aboriginal people are lower than me as a white person? Fuck you. I do not think like that even for a second. So fuck off. Honestly, I cannot cop that shit. I do not think of Aboriginal people as below me. That's ridiculous. So, Aboriginal people have suffered for a very long time, 2.5 centuries, at the hands of white people, people who look like me. And as horrific as all of that is, obviously I haven't done anything, so I'm not to blame, although we do sort of get the blame as white people, and I don't think that's helpful either. But I also don't think that many Aboriginal people think like that. I really don't. Let me know. If you're an Aboriginal person, let me know about that in the comment section below. I'm going to ask you a lot of other questions in this video, but I think that's important. As I said before, I've been in trouble for making jokes about Aboriginal people, but here's what I actually think. I'm pro changing the date. I know a lot of people will be freaked out by that. I'm pro changing the date of our national day, Australia Day. It's held on January 26th. I think change it, and I'll tell you why. A lot of elders in the Aboriginal community see that as a day that's shrined in genocide for those people. And I think if your grandmother was so upset by a day that she would cry on that day and she would see it as a day that reminded her of the death of her families and everyone's celebrating and getting drunk, then fucking let's pick a new day, man. It's not that important. I also hate the way that Indigenous communities, particularly the very rural ones, are ignored by the government. There's also communities out there that aren't just Indigenous that are also ignored, but the vast majority are Indigenous. A lot of Indigenous brothers, they will commit crimes at higher rates than white people, and some people say that, no, well, they're just bad people. Yeah, those particular individuals might be bad people, but what is causing that incident? What is causing that? What happens to them in their youth? These are problems that we all need to address, and people are claiming that this is what The Voice will do. I think some people will be quite surprised as to what I will vote in this referendum, but we'll get to that. In our country right now, there are two camps, all right? There are the yes voters, which there's a lot of Indigenous people who are voting yes. There's also a lot of white saviours who are voting yes. The vast majority of people who are voting yes seem to be people who live in inner city Melbourne and they live in affluent suburbs, those type of people. And then there are the people who are voting no, the Nazis. Seriously, some people call those people Nazis because there was a rally held and some of those insane people, there's always Nazis turning up to rallies, these insane human beings, these neo-Nazis that are, I don't understand what their belief systems are, but I can just assume they're fucking insane. Long story short, not all no voters are Nazis. Oh yeah, I'm sure some are. As far as the referendum is concerned, here's my thought process behind the vote. The question itself, at least the start of it, makes complete sense. Alter the Constitution to recognise the First Peoples of Australia, to change it to include Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander individuals who have been in this country for some people say 60,000 years, probably fucking 80, 85 to 90,000 years, a very long time. And I think if you just asked people that, they'd be like, yeah, of course you should do that. You mean it's not in there already? It shits me up the wall that white people in this country aren't allowed to be proud of Indigenous culture and heritage. Obviously, I have Irish and Scottish and British heritage. Yeah, it's pretty obvious because I burn like that. But I have been in this country my entire life, so has my parents, so have their parents, their grandparents, it goes on and on and on. And I would like to just say that I feel like I am more closely related to Indigenous culture than I am Scottish. At least I've been here. I love the fact that we have a people's culture and heritage here that has existed for 60 to 80,000 years. I really genuinely love that. And I think there's nothing wrong as a white person saying that. I think it's fucking great. I think it's great that we respect it, and I think it's great that we celebrate it. But what may shock a lot of you, particularly if you're not from this country, most people, if you ask them, are planning on voting no. I'll tell you why they're going to vote no, and I'll tell you why I think the no vote will win. There are a lot of reasons. Number one, this bloke, Anthony Albanese. This is Australia's Prime Minister right now, and he has royally fucked the idea of this voice thing. And by the way, who the fuck chose the name The Voice? It could have been anything else. It doesn't mean anything. It's also a TV show. Fuck me. Anyway, there's Albo, right? The Prime Minister. He's telling everybody to do the right thing. Do the right thing and vote yes. Do the right thing. Well, Albo, that's a fucking dumb thing to say because there's a lot of people who over the last 3 years have been told to do the right thing and they think, oh, well, that was when we had all our fucking civil liberties taken off us and we were forced to do things we didn't want to do. That's a fucking dumb thing to say, mate. We all think back to an illness when we're told to do the right thing. I don't think that was a very smart move. And it's also trying to guilt people into doing it. That's not smart either. You're pushing people up against the wall. And this is where this anger, this divide comes from. People don't like to be labelled racist. You know who doesn't care about being labelled racists? Racists. They're like, yeah, fuck, that's me. But if you're not a racist and you're labelled a racist, people get their backs up. That's what's pissed off a lot of people in this country. The Prime Minister talks about the voice, but there's reasons that people don't trust him. The reasons are as follows. Well, they include, but they're not limited to, there's no detail about what this voice will be. There's no numbers. There's no explanation of the people involved. Oh, they're going to be chosen by the Parliament. Well, are they going to be voted in? Who will they represent? Where are the details? There's no plan, there's no explanation, there's nothing. Literally. Albo's getting on TV, the Prime Minister saying, we'll sort all that out later on. We'll sort it out later on. I have so many questions. Are the people in the voice, if it gets through, are you just going to pick your mates in politics who have been around for a long time, who have jumped through the right hoops, who have sucked the right dicks? Are they the people you're going to pick? Well, what if they don't represent Indigenous people the way you want them to? I reckon I've got the best way that they could have made the voice an actually fantastic thing. But I'll get to that in a second. I just think people don't blindly trust the government anymore. They just don't. I think that's a really good thing. But yeah, breaking it down into you versus me, yes versus no, and not just saying, hey, let's have a discussion. I think that's incredibly damaging to this entire debate and what it's trying to achieve. Because what it's trying to achieve is very good.
There's actually 3 campaigns that we're seeing. The yes, the genuine no, which is from community which have extremely valuable opinions and critiques when it comes to identifying what works and what doesn't work with the voice to Parliament. But then there's also a really strong racist no campaign.
Basically, to break down that insane statement, a yes vote is okay, a no vote is okay if you're not white, and if you're white, then you're a racist if you vote no. Simple. But everyone comes back to the detail thing. There's no detail. And people on the yes side are like, don't worry about the detail. That's not for you to worry about. Fuck off. Of course it is. In what world do you listen to the government say, don't worry about it, we'll sort it out, we'll tell you the details later on. You just let us do it. No one trusts the government. No one should trust the government. They are not trustworthy people. Not individuals. Albo might be trustworthy, but as a group, as a corporation, perhaps you could even call it, listen to me fucking go. They're not trustworthy people. They're just not. This is what Albo had to say about it. The detail of the voice would be left to federal parliamentarians to debate rather than let it be a central element of the proposed referendum. What I'm not going to do is go down the cul-de-sac of getting into every detail, because that's not a recipe for success. Yeah, details about laws. That's not a thing we need to know. And I think this is the reason most people vote no, because there's not enough detail. I think people are relatively intelligent. If you just gave them the detail, they would have been sweet. This part of the video is for the yes voters. What happens if the yes vote is successful, right? And then they work out the details. What if you don't agree with them, number one? What if you don't agree with the details, but you voted yes anyway, and now it's in the Constitution forever? And on the topic of being in the Constitution forever, if the government picks who is in control of the voice, and whoever is in control of the voice then basically connects the government to Indigenous folk, what if that government in 100 years' time isn't the government of today? What if it's not Albanese and a left-wing government? What if it's a fucking far-right government in 100 years' time? And you have someone leading that charge who is a horrible, despicable person, but chosen by the government. Point being, don't let the government decide things, right? Fuck, I wish these people would stay out of our lives a little bit more. It's getting ridiculous. And it's not just that. People are also voting no because of the leadership of the no campaign and people who will be involved with the voice forevermore, it seems. People like this dude, Thomas Mayo.
There is nothing that we can do that is more powerful than building a First Nations voice, a black institution, a black political force to be reckoned with, because I know you comrades that are listening today will continue to support our struggle, and you are an important part of the struggle, just like our communist elders have been an important part of our struggle.
Thanks, comrade. That was fantastic.
Okay, well, fuck. I don't trust that even slightly. Funny story about old Mayo, the big old condiment himself. He was actually booked to come onto my podcast at the start of the year. The Yes campaign reached out and said, we'd love to have Thomas come on and talk about the Yes campaign. And then they found out I was a big racist because I made a joke on stage because I'm a comedian and apparently you're not allowed to do that. And they said, no, we can't be associated with you. So old commie brother fucking Thomas can't be associated with poor little old me. And I'm upset about it. It's funny, you know, people are like religious with whether or not they're going to vote yes or no. They're going to stick to it You cannot change their mind. But I think I found something, some evidence, that if you're a hardcore yes voter, I guarantee you're going to change your mind after you see what I've found.
It's your chance, it's the voice, October 14th, it's your choice. Referendum, make it clear or wait another 30 years. Cause concerns you've misheard, it's not a handout, it's been heard. But have your say, make it stay. I don't wanna vote that day. We didn't start the fire, it was always burning since the world's been turning.
I am ready to vote no on continuing to live after seeing that. One thing that has been brought up more and more, and we've heard all about it, but most people know nothing about it, is the Uluru Statement from the heart. Now, Uluru, also known as Ayers Rock, is a giant rock in the middle of the country, very famous here in Australia. It has cultural significance to Aboriginal people of that area, and a large group of Indigenous people had a big old discussion about what they want from the government, and they named it the Uluru Statement from the heart. Now, that is what has led us down the track to the voice. But we're hearing about it a lot. We're also hearing that it's a one-page document. It's just a one-page document. Here's the one page. It's just a one-page document. But that's not true. And I know that's a fucking racist talking point, apparently, because they said it on Sky News. But it's not true at all. In fact, it's 26 pages. Yeah, look, we'll have a quick scroll. There's all of the pages. There's plenty of pages. Now, all of these other pages, they're meeting notes. They're discussions that were had. There were different ideas thrown around. There's nothing insane about the stuff that's in there. There's a few things you're like, oh, okay, that's something we need to discuss. We probably should know about that. But there's nothing super crazy. So I don't know why they lied and said it was only one page. If you said it was 26 pages, it wouldn't have hurt anyone. It wouldn't have hurt the Yes campaign at all. There was a couple of things in there about treaty and stuff like that that I just don't know enough about. Like if it includes reparations, then I'm fucking not behind it at all, because people who are alive today should not have to pay for the past atrocities committed by people who sort of look like them, but that's just my thoughts. I did see some beautiful things in there, particularly about self-determination. I think that's really important. Aboriginal people having control about what happens to Aboriginal people, that's important. Reform is also very important. And truth-telling. Truth-telling was something that was constantly brought up in this 26-page document that I think is really, really important. I think the wording is dumb, truth-telling. Like, it's not truth-telling if it's fucking factual. Just call it accurate history. That's what should be taught in schools. Because there really is an interesting way that history is taught. It's taught by the victors, right? That's how it's always taught. So the people who came to Australia, committed genocides, all that shit, they decided what the history was. But it's not true. And they cut out all the shit that's not very, nice to read about them. And that's not accurate. So yeah, we should be doing truth-telling or being factually accurate. We should definitely be doing that, particularly in schools. We need to know that shit because we need to make sure it never happens again. And it's not just white people. Aboriginal people committed atrocities to each other. This is part of human nature, and that's why we need to learn about it so we don't do it again. So, what does the Uluru Statement of the Heart actually say about the voice to Parliament? Voice to Parliament, a constantly entrenched voice to Parliament, was a strongly supported option across the dialogues. There was a concern that the proposed body, the voice, would have an insufficient power if its constitutional function was advisory only. So that's an interesting point that people should probably talk about. And there was support in many dialogues for it to be given stronger powers so that it could be a mechanism for providing free, prior and informed consent. What does that even mean? Any voice to Parliament should be designed so that it could support and promote a treaty-making process. What is involved in that? This is why these details are important. It must represent communities in remote, rural, urban areas and must not be compromised of hand-picked leaders. That's fucking important. Why is that not included? Because there's a lie about these 26 pages. If you just said there was 26 fucking pages, you could have used that. That's important. A number of dialogues considered ways that political representation could be achieved, other than through the proposed constitutional voice. The creation of a black parliament that represents communities across Australia, which, by the way, I know it sounds a bit like, why does race matter? I think it's important to have representatives from every single community. I'll get into that. Then it details all about treaty on page 23 of the one-page document. And I just don't know enough about treaty. I'm interested to know about treaty. Let me know in the comments section. So the Uluru Statement of the Heart is important and it's interesting. So why weren't we told all about it? Why weren't we given all of the information? That is a very strange thing to do. Regardless of what you've thought about what I've said thus far, I think all of us can agree that we want all of our Indigenous brothers and sisters to have all of the opportunities that everyone else has. And the truth is, most Indigenous people do. Like, they have all of the opportunities, except for the ones that live in these very remote and rural places. They don't have access to running water in some of them. Like, that is insane. In fact, now that I think about it, all the Aboriginal people that I know, let's say I know 6, 7, 8, like in my close circle, they're all doing really well. But I live in a fucking metropolitan area, so what the fuck would I know? I think some people in that culture do have a victimhood complex, and I think it's taught, and I don't think it's healthy. Like, obviously they've experienced a horrific shit, but if you're born in a city or near a city, like, you go to a good school, like, just because most schools in Australia are good schools, that's just the facts, right? We have a very good school, like, education system. They teach some weird shit, but they're very good. If you have that opportunity, then you have every opportunity like everybody else. So for some people, it's taught, this victimhood complex. For others, they really are trudging through the mud every single fucking day and dealing with shit. So they are the people that need help. You ever been to Darwin? Dude, there's a lot of people up there, human beings, that need fucking assistance. You go south to Alice Springs, there's even more. You go to the west, to the east, there's even more. Which, I don't know, I reckon maybe the $300+ million that was spent on this referendum, maybe that could have helped them. Or the $1 billion we sent to the fucking Ukraine. So, here's the question. How will I vote? I think, the more and more I think about it, I have to vote no. Not because I think it's a terrible idea, I just think the way the government has handled it is atrocious. They haven't done this any justice at all. I also fear that if the yes vote gets up, then the government just goes, well, we've done all we can do. Now over to the voice. And they just forget about Indigenous people. Because there's a voice now. There's a voice. The voice will handle it. Doesn't work like that, mate. I think Albo is just trying to win another fucking election. I think that's what it comes down to. I don't know. Trusting the government this much just seems off. Here's what I think should happen. Here's what I think they should have done from the very start, and what they still could do, perhaps in the future, is this. And if you're an Aboriginal person or a Torres Strait Islander person, let me know what you think down below if you think this is a good idea. If you're a white person, get moving. Get out of my way. Here's what they should have done, and I would have voted yes on absolutely. There should be an Indigenous council. Now, I know there are heaps of different Indigenous organisation. I think there's like 200, 300, 400 or something that actually are there to help support Indigenous people in remote communities, which is another reason why people are like, oh, hang on, what's this fucking voice going to do? There's already all of these people helping, and it's not getting done correctly. So whatever you're doing it wrong. Maybe the government is just fucking shit at this, hence why they have issues with the voice coming in, because it's the government in control of it, etc., etc., etc. Here's what I think should happen. There should be an Indigenous council, like the Black Parliament that I referenced earlier from the Uluru Statement of the Heart, where, now this photo is important here, and this is what I thought early on. I decided that I was going to vote no because I feel like this is a much better idea. This photo here represents all the different mobs throughout Australia, the tribes, if you will. Mob, tribe, same sort of thing, right? Just throwing that out there. Not racist. I'm sorry I used the word tribes. Fuck. The mobs, that's what they call their groups. Can I say there? Jesus! Each mob is represented by a different colour here. As you can see, there are a lot of them. Many of these still exist, particularly in highly populated areas. Now, why wouldn't every one of those places have a representative in this Black Parliament, this Black Council? And those people, those representatives, are voted in by their constituents, which happens to be Indigenous folk who have either they live in that area or their families from that area, and they vote them in. So they know what's happening in their community. Thomas Mayo's not running it, who lives, I don't know, he probably lives in fucking some expensive house somewhere, although he's a communist, which that makes no sense. Although I guess that is communism, right? Makes sense on paper, not in real life, because human beings are flawed. That person represents that area. They know what's going on. And they all get together and they have these conversations, and maybe that is what we need here. Not picked by the government, but picked by the people. Indigenous people who know what they need. This gives a voice self-determination, accountability, and allows for reform. And here's the crazy thing. Maybe this is the plan all along. But don't worry about the details. The details aren't important. There's other things that I do and I don't like about this voice argument and the arguments for and against it. I don't like the idea that people have been saying that Aboriginal people don't have a voice in Australian politics. There's 11 parliamentarians who happen to be Aboriginal people, so obviously they do have a voice. But I do like that the voice is at least an attempt to bring us closer as a nation. I really truly want that. I don't like the idea that if you question it, you're a racist though. That's ridiculous. I think integrating Aboriginal culture and heritage and teachings and the way that these people once lived, I think that's incredibly important for white culture as well. And when I say white culture, I mean Australian culture. I don't give a fuck where my ancestors came from 300 years ago. This is my country and we should live like the New Zealanders do. They use Maori language in their day-to-day lives. Why can't we? We don't have to start talking in different languages and whatnot, but why don't we have that infused in our lives? Like, we should all be proud of Indigenous culture. I don't like the idea that this voice will solve everything because there's already so many different Indigenous organisations that are failing. Obviously, there's a communication issue, and maybe the voice would fix that. But there's no details. We're throwing enormous amounts of money at this. We've got no details. Everyone's a racist if they're thinking about it. No wonder people are iffy about voting yes. Most importantly, the government doesn't give a shit. They don't care at all. All of these fucking yes voters carrying on like they think the government actually cares. They do not care. They don't care. They're just as much as a bunch of white fucking saviors as you are. They're just trying to win the next election and stay in power. That's it. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you know my fucking thoughts on this, and thank you for sticking around for the entire video. Not all Aboriginal people, though, and Torres Strait Islander people here in Australia agree with the voice, and I thought we should end this video with their voice, their opinion from perhaps rural parts of the country. I don't know where these people are from, but I think it's important to listen to them. Ladies and gentlemen, be a good motherfucker. Peace in the Middle East. Be dick stinks. Make sure you let me know what you think down below. Anyway, I'm going to go off to a KKK meeting because that's what all people who are voting no are doing at the moment. And I'll see you for another video tomorrow. Toodaloo, au revoir, bye-bye.
I really don't know much about the referendum, no. I don't understand it. I don't know what it's going to do for us.
It's only going to make things worse, I'll see. That's my opinion. Everyone's got their own opinion.
I don't agree with the voice. I think there's a hidden agenda there, which, you know, because of so many things that happened to our people. I'm part of the stolen generation, and I just don't trust the government anymore. I just, think that it should have been explained more in detail what we get out of it and what that voice will mean to us.
No one here really talks about it.